Hello everybody, welcome back to Kanga TV, home of North Melbourne fans, and welcome to the round 14 review. Another heartbreaking loss for North Melbourne, going down by a single goal to Fremantle over at Optus Stadium in Perth last night. Heartbreak is definitely the word to summarise this one, if I could only use one. Fremantle 10-13, 73 to North Melbourne 10-7, 67. There's definitely two ways to look at this game from last night. The first one is that this game, for me, breaks every rule that I have set for myself in terms of expectation and in terms of rebuilding and in terms of signs for the future. You guys know I hate honourable losses, and you know that I don't agree with taking a loss as a win. You can be proud of the effort and proud of the display, but ultimately the 4 points is what we want to walk away with at the end of the evening. But last night I do feel like it was a bit of an exception to the rule, and I know there's people out there who will disagree, and I will get to the other side of that in a minute. But that really hurt, and that one is heartbreaking because we threw everything we had at Fremantle, and to still come up short at the end of the day and to simply lose a game because you maybe weren't good enough hurts. We won every single stat just about on the stat sheet. The only one that really sticks out in my mind was the efficiency inside 50. We were going at 33% or 33.5%. Fremantle went at 50%. But on the flip side, our tackling inside forward 50 was immense to combat that. I think it was 29 to 7 tackles inside our forward 50. Some massive individual performances and some really team lifted and spirited performances. And in my mind, a part of this was a flow-on effect of the win against West Coast last week. I don't know how many people before last week's game would have gone into the game against Fremantle thinking, yeah, we're going to absolutely ruffle their feathers. We're going to throw everything we have at them and really give it our best shot. I think a lot of people, and I was reading a lot of comments, especially in the comment section here throughout the week, I don't know if people really gave us much of a thought that we would be able to come anywhere close to Fremantle, who I think are better than their ladder position suggests. Particularly, they were out of the 8 last night. They're back in the 8 today, but I think they're starting to peak at the right time. So I think we've caught them while off a bye in form. So I think the confidence and the mindset shift we would have been able to take away from the win against West Coast into this game against Fremantle to put in a performance like that. Now I think looking ahead to next week against Carlton, and I have a bit of PTSD from Good Friday and the confidence I felt going into Good Friday, but we realistically should be able to take that confidence now and apply it next week. While the win against West Coast was ugly last weekend, and I think a lot of people were left dissatisfied, you can see the flow-on effects these things can have for the confidence within the four walls of the football club and the playing group. So that's probably the first side of it. The other side of it, of course, is it only took Fremantle 5 minutes to dismantle us. And so often this season and in seasons before, we've seen the opposition get a little bit of a run on and we're unable to stop the bleeding. This did happen, not as much last night as it did in round 2 last year. We were miles ahead of Fremantle and it took 10 minutes to go in the second quarter, funnily enough, in that game last year for Freo to start to get a run on and just about break the game open. And then in the second half, they ran over the top of us. I guess in 18 months since that game, we've obviously developed and matured enough that Fremantle had their run on. They kicked, 5 goals in the last 10 minutes of the second quarter. But for us to come out after halftime in the third quarter, it was a fairly even contest, and then to just throw everything we had at them in the last quarter to almost pinch the game was a really mature and a really pleasing sign of progression and development. And I think that's something you probably need to take away from the game as well, is that we are a young side. We've been on the bottom of the ladder for so long, and these things can take time. Maybe the issues that we've had at the club have been so deeply embedded in the culture and in the day-to-day life of the North Melbourne staff and playing group that to 18 months on from that game in round 2 to be where we are now, still a goal away from victory and moments away from victory. It definitely hurts, don't get me wrong, but it does to me symbolise and signify that we are on the right track. And I can't really explain why I feel like the game against Fremantle was different to Port and Essendon, or even the draw against Brisbane. If anyone has any way of being able to put those feelings into words, please leave it in the comments below, because I'm kind of searching for that today. But sometimes you just can't explain it, and it goes against pretty much everything I talk about on this channel. We want tangible improvement. We want tangible signs of improvement and success, and knowing that the building blocks are there and the stepping stones towards success are there. But there is just something about last night's game, and I can't put my finger on it, because I think the effort is there every single week, and I think I want to believe the fight and the effort, I should say, is there every single week. And I want to believe that, performances like this are what we strive to bring out and do deliver on a week-to-week basis. But something about last night's game felt different, and you kind of just sit here at the end and think, we're maybe just not good enough on the night. Because, like I said, we won just about every single stat line. The discrepancy in disposal efficiency wasn't even that much to Freo's favour. It kind of just feels like small moments changed the game for us, some our own doing and some out of our control. So, yeah, definitely an elevated feeling this morning, and definitely not one of disappointment, but more of hurt and heartbreak, because they really deserved the win last night. Yeah, they really did. But just unfortunately not good enough to get it done on this occasion. I want to start the review by talking about someone who I think symbolises what it is to be a North Melbourne person through and through. And if there's ever been a redemption story in season 2025 to talk about and to focus on, it's that of Luke McDonald. I actually thought all 3 Lukes last night for North were enormous in their own right. I thought LDU was enormous in that first quarter. He really was, along with Harry Sheasel, got the game going for North. And I was really pleased with what he put out there. And it was a very complete game, I thought, from LDU. He copped a lot of criticism last week. Maybe just not lifting the way we need him to and what we know he can do. You can't really argue with the game that he put out last night. It's 27 touches and a goal, and 6 clearances and 5 tackles. And that, for me, is a complete game from LDU, because he's doing it offensively and defensively. And at the start of the game, so often he was the one who was trying to start something and trying to get us out of trouble. But in the last quarter, it was Luke McDonald and Luke Parker who were just 2 absolute warriors. I mean, if I was on the live stream last night with Cardi, and if anyone does want to relive the dying moments of last night's game, or any part of last night's game, I'll leave a link to that in the description below. But someone made a comment and said if someone could win a Brownlow off a fourth quarter performance, it would be Luke Parker last night. I mean, he was just enormous. He finished the game with 20 touches, 2 goals, 4 marks, 3 tackles, 7 clearances in just a magnificent display. And Luke McDonald down back, I really thought he was the glue that held us together last night. 27 touches, 8 marks and a tackle to go with it. It was just the 1%ers and the pressure from Luke McDonald that really impressed me. And I think him giving up the captaincy heading into season 2025 is one of the best things that he's done for his career and for his confidence. He is just able to play footy and just contribute so well. And as a person, and as a North Melbourne person, having someone like Luke McDonald at this club to steer us back in the right direction is exactly what we need. And I've loved the redemption for Luke McDonald. I really, really have. And last night, he was on the ground for 94% of the game as well. So he was in and amongst it for majority of the game. And nothing is more pleasing for me and the flow and effect that it's having on our players, especially a backline that is so depleted and once again has been through a number of different people through to injury, through to form. He's been one constant in our backline all season who we can just really rely on. And I think we have really been able to rely on him. So I've absolutely loved what he's brought, not just this season, but last night in particular. I couldn't start this video without mentioning it because that really is a heart and soul performance from a heart and soul person, a heart and soul North Melbourne person. And I think that is a real symbol of what we delivered on the ground last night. Speaking of heart and soul, it was wonderful to see Nick Larkey just about back to his best last night, a 3-goal performance in something that no doubt will boost his confidence and lift his spirits after what has been a very quiet sort of 6 to 7 game period for Suv. Unfortunately, there was a couple of free kicks there that were missed and probably changed the momentum of the game. That one in the goal square, the non-holding the ball decision, probably one that is going to stick in the minds of most supporters for majority of the year as something that could have and should have been. But unfortunately, it wasn't, and we just have to kind of take it and move on. If that game is the one that brings Nick Larkey back into form and brings him back into his best and what we know that he can do, then it's going to serve us very, very well for the remainder of the season. It was just so pleasing to see him so fired up and so invested in the game. It's not to say that he hasn't been, again, for the last 6 or 7 weeks, but he just looked really like a man on a mission almost. He was great in front of goal, but his work below his knees as well is equally as impressive. And, you know, I do think that he's someone that is just so important to this side. And I know there's been calls to drop him, which I personally think are absolutely outrageous, because all you need is to get him in a situation like he was in last night where he was able to just take the bull by the horns and go with it. And the thing that I've spoken about all year with our forward line is how well it's functioning. And there's always one player that steps up and there's always one player that rises to the occasion. It's been Paul Curtis often. It's been Cam Zurhaar often. And last night when Cam Zurhaar received a pretty bad knock quite early in the game, and I want to get to that in a second. He just didn't really look right, and he got knocked about 3 times last night, and he just looked quite proppy, and we elected to keep him on for the duration of the game, and was that to our detriment potentially? But Nick Larkey in this instance was able to step up. Luke Parker in the last quarter was amazing. Jack Darling's goal on the 3/4 time siren arguably changed the course of the game, because he kicks that from 55 metres, and it was one of the best goals I've seen all year from JD, and everyone knows how much I love Jack Darling, and that goal just shifted the game. I think it probably brought us back to we're in this with a bit of a sniff, to this is too far beyond our reach. And the game last night, like I said, I felt it was a game of moments, both for and against us. And that really gave us a little bit of confidence and a little bit of hope, even though we were a few goals down still at that point. I think had that not gone through, maybe we would have felt a little bit differently. And that is a small moment. Like a win last week was a big moment. That goal was a small moment that probably gave us the confidence that we needed to really throw everything we had at Fremantle last night. I want to touch on Cam Zurhaar. Like I said, he was knocked about quite a bit and he didn't really look right. He received a few knocks to the body and he got crunched in a pack sort of in that 3rd quarter. I don't know if I agree with the decision to keep him out on the field. Last night it might have been to his detriment. Having said that, I do agree with the decision to pull Dawson from the field and replace him with Robert Hansen Jr. Heading into this game, my biggest fear was that we weren't tall enough to match it with Freo, but the decision to inject a little bit of run and pace in the 3rd quarter in Robert Hansen Jr. was absolutely the right call, and boy, what difference a week can make. Hansen Jr. was a very, very impactful sub last night. He gave us a lot of dash and a lot of excitement along the wing. He had 7 touches 5 score involvements and 3 goal assists from 30% of total game time. And that is exactly the kind of thing you need a sub to do. He might not have been able to do it last week, but he absolutely did it this week. And I don't know if there's a way in which we can bring this out of him over 3.5 to 4 quarters. I don't know if it's a fitness thing. I don't know if he's someone that starts and then gets subbed off if he isn't able to deliver something like that across 4 quarters, but in 1.5 quarters for him to bring out numbers like that, he definitely would have been a big reason as to why we were able to get back into that game and almost steal it in the 4th quarter. Callan Dawson, unfortunately, just wasn't able to have an impact down back. However, Griffin Logue was, and it was nice to see the return to form of Griffin Logue, especially against his old side. I haven't seen Griff put in a performance like he did for quite some time. I think that there is definitely something there we can still work with, and I think at his best, he still is our best key defender. Toby Pink was good last night again, but I did think that Griff was probably our best defender in this circumstance, and it goes to ask the question now, what does our backline look like next week when we come back to Melbourne? Aiden Core has been sidelined for a couple of weeks with a bit of a dodgy calf. Jackson Archer yesterday did make his return to the VFL. He was pretty quiet. He started strong and then faded. I was at Arden Street watching on, and I think if he follows the same rehabilitation return structure that George Wardlaw did earlier this year, then he would play another game in the VFL next week and then look to return against Hawthorn, and we go down to Launceston the week later. So do we keep Cal Dawson in there for another week? Is it Aiden Core that comes back? Is Arch ready? Does he just come back straight away? I don't know if off form particularly he's ready to come back. I also did hear a couple of bits and pieces floated around after the game yesterday that he was really sore, and he did pull up really sore after the game. He didn't play the last quarter at all. So there's a few moving parts and pieces still in our backline. One person who we know won't be returning to the backline anytime soon is Harry Sheasel. I thought that his game last night was back to just about what we know can be his best, especially in that first quarter. I think he had about 12 touches in the first quarter. He was everywhere, and along with LDU, really tried to get something going and something started. He finished the game with 32 touches, a goal, 9 marks, 6 tackles, and 3 clearances. And I think, like LDU, what pleases me the most is the tackling pressure and the defensive presence that this side is starting to build, because that was, for me, the biggest criticism I had of this side in the first half of the year. But last night, not only did we win the tackle count for the game, but the tackling inside 50 and our ability and our want and our hunger to keep the ball inside our forward 50 and in our attacking half as much as possible was just fantastic. Paul Curtis, we know Paul Curtis is so dangerous in front of goal, but often his defensive efforts are forgotten about. But last night he had 9 tackles. That was a team high, and Caleb Sarong with 10 was the highest tackle count on the ground for an individual player. So for that, from Paul Curtis, I thought was just sensational. When you're focusing on individuals in this game, I guess the only one who probably disappointed me was Jai Simpkin. I thought that on the back of the inspirational performance he put out last week, he failed to back it up. And I know the beauty of bringing in other senior figures and having the likes of Luke Parker and Luke McDonald in that last quarter in particular really step up and lead from the front. You're still the captain, and I do think that the onus does fall on him to be able to contribute in big games and big moments like we probably needed from him last night. He was pretty quiet and couldn't really get himself involved in the game as much as we might have liked, and I think that consistency from the front, from Jai Simpkin, is something that we really need moving forward as a football club. And last night would have been, again, like last week, a really great opportunity for him to step up and really lead like a captain should. It wasn't a bad game, just a quiet game, and probably a game where we did need more from Jai, like I said. So to not get that was probably a little bit disappointing. But I think overall the feeling, and I said this at the start of the video, is heartbreak, and it's pride at the same time. It was a fantastic performance, and it probably is the exception to the rule. And it's not to say that you're going to accept a loss, because you never do, but I don't think I've felt this way yet this year. At the end of losing a game, and I know plenty of people have taken so much out of the games against Port or against Essendon, or even the draw against Brisbane, even potentially at the start of the year against the Bulldogs, this genuinely feels different. And I guess the pleasing thing for me is we saw the disaster of Good Friday and we tightened ourselves up until the Collingwood game. We inched closer and closer and closer to victory up until we beat Richmond. And then in that Collingwood game for the first half, we were really competitive and we stuck with them for 2.5 to 3 quarters until we had that fourth quarter fade out. Now, since the bye, the fourth quarters that we've had have been really, really, really strong. And we're finishing out games really, really strongly. Not only that, but we won the first quarter last night and we won the first quarter against West Coast. We've only done that once in the first half of the year against Richmond, but we're 2 from 2 in first quarters after the bye, which again is a really pleasing thing. So I think for me, bits and pieces of the puzzle that we're missing are now starting to be put together. And some things are out of our control. There was that Foss fresh airy where he missed that soccer off the ground. That would have been an unbelievable goal, and that really would have given us a lot of momentum. And that missed Nick Larkey holding the ball decision in the goal square. That obviously would have shifted the game back towards us and the momentum back our way. But then on the flip side, that goal to Jack Darling, he got the kick away in the perfect time. And if that goal wouldn't have gone through or wouldn't have made the distance, I don't know how the last quarter would have played out. So footy is definitely a game of inches and moments and seconds, and we are learning that week by week. In the meantime, we are actively fixing holes in our game plan, and the last 2 weeks has been a symbol of that. And looking at the Western Australian experiment, call it that, at the end of the 2 games, I'd say the first year has been a success. We were 1 win and a goal away from a second. I think the crowd last night at Optus Stadium was solid, 31,000. I think if there's anything that I would do next year differently, and I think we will flip. So I think we play Fremantle and Bunbury next year and West Coast at Optus Stadium. But if it was me, I would find a way to make more tickets accessible to Fremantle and West Coast Eagles members, depending on who we play at Optus, because for a stadium that can seat 60,000 people, and I know it was raining last night, but it was pretty disappointing to have a half full Optus Stadium when we were playing a team at their home ground, albeit it was technically our home game. So if there was one thing from a commercial standpoint that I would look to fix, that would definitely be it. But overall, I think the first year in WA gets a big tick from me, and knowing that the 2 games we play in Tassie, in Hobart this year, will come back to Melbourne next year, I think is a really big win for everyone, and in particular for the club moving forward as we try to, strengthen our supporter base, strengthen our connection to our supporters, and hopefully be able to strengthen our on-field performances as well and move up the ladder. I think that's just about enough heartbreak I can digest and talk about for today. How are you guys feeling after that game against Fremantle over at Optus Stadium? Leave all of your thoughts in the comments below. We can also continue chatting over on socials, Kanga TV show on Instagram, X, Facebook, and email if you are that way inclined as well. Next week, we take on Carlton once again, Saturday afternoon at the MCG, and I think this is going to be a very, very telling game to see how far we have come in a short space of time. It feels like just yesterday the nightmare of Good Friday occurred. So I'm sure there's going to be plenty to discuss and unpack in the lead up to that. I look forward to seeing you guys throughout the week, and then back home in Melbourne after way too long time spent away. You guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I have no doubt I will see you all very, very soon. Go Roos.